Our next speaker is Jenn, who is a retired US Navy captain and a Commodore for 1,800 personnel. She is also a civil engineer, and she lectures at Berkeley and UCLA. Jenn, please come on stage.
Good afternoon. This is going to be a handy guide. Now, as I've said, and as you've heard, I was recently in charge of 1,800 people, which is quite a lot. But on my civilian side, I've also been in charge of multiple groups, dispersed groups sort of all over the world. Now, as we've gone through COVID, many of us have gone home. We've worked from home, and we're not in that same type of cohesive network that we used to be. Luckily, I have an office manager, and his name is Pliny. Pliny is really great. He is wonderful for the motivation of the office, and he has this uncanny ability to tell me exactly when it's 4:30 on a Friday. Now, Pliny has also been the eternal employee of the month for about the past 5 years. But what does that really mean for the rest of us? We can't just feed our people kibble and expect them to stick around. We have to retain our people. As even you heard in the last talk, retaining our personnel is one of the most important things that we can do as leaders. Now, the US Bureau of Labor keeps track of how many people quit every single month. Now, as you can see here on the graph, between 2016 and 2019, in the United States, about 2 to 2.5% of the entire workforce quit their jobs. It's pretty stable, and it's pretty boring. But this is what 2020 looked like. And you can see that huge dip as we went into April, where people were scared. We were going into something that we'd never gone into before. People didn't want to quit their jobs. But take a look at December of 2020. You can see that the amount of people quitting their jobs is on par or even higher than it has been in previous years. One of my best friends was one of those. She was a single mom in the Bay Area of the United States, which is one of the most expensive places to live. She went to work every day, and she had someone in her team that would scream in meetings whenever she didn't get her way. There were people who were just absolutely nasty to each other on a day-to-day basis. And she finally said, you know what, I've had enough, and she quit. She's one of those statistics. But we all know across the entire world, we have inflation and we have the Great Resignation, or the Great Reshuffle, as many people called it. And so in the US, this is what it looks like. Look at how much higher the quit rates are in 2021. And even in 2022, like I said, this is a handy guide, that's why there's pointers. All right, you can see how many people are quitting their jobs. Now, for a lot of us at companies, that means a couple of things. We're going to have to now go out and we're going to have to recruit. We're going to have to hire, and we're going to have to onboard those people. But what does that do for the team that you currently have? When someone quits your team, they're leaving a huge hole. Everybody else already has their own duties, and now they're having to take over what that person did. They're already stressed out as it is, but now they're having to do extra duties. That's why it's so important to try to maintain who we have. And so this is going to be a very interactive type of session. Now, this is a different Slido QR code. So if you will, please pull out your phones. And for those online, you can do the absolute same. Go ahead and scan in the QR code. So this is using Stretch. And I would like to know, oh, by the way, make sure that you go to the polls section and not the QA section. Go to the polls area, and I want to know, do you know of anybody who has quit in the last 2 years? So we have about 90% that did. Oh, we have some no's. That's wonderful. We also have a lot of I dids. This is a lot of people who are quitting their jobs. They're reshuffling, they're going someplace else. So why are they leaving? Hopefully you took a look at the last presentation. There were some cues that were there. But on average, most employers think that their employees are leaving because they want more money. 80% of them think that. But in reality, if you take a look at all of the people who are leaving, only about 20% are leaving because they want more money. So what are the other 80% leaving for? And so I'll ask you, and you can just go online and tell me, why did the people that you know quit? Or maybe if it was yourself, why did you quit? Money. Money. Wow, lots of money. Bad managers, stressed out, burned out. Impact. They didn't have meaning. Toxic work environments. Organizational structure, product maintenance, didn't feel valued. Micromanagement, the company was too big. Work from home flexibility. Mastery. Interesting work, bad manager and stress. So I'm seeing lots of people who are looking at organizations, impact, dead ends, the commute. Lots of people are going for money, that's great. You guys are totally blowing away my statistics from previous. It's an international crew, I'll have to update that. All right, so you get an idea. Now, I've been doing this for the last about 2 years, asking people why they quit. Different conferences, different workshops. And if I pull it all together, it looks something like this. So these are the words that are the largest, are the ones that got the most hits. A lot of them have to do with management. A lot of them have to do with leadership. Toxic work environments, the culture that they're in. And you can see that there's a thread that goes through all of these, and it's how people are being led. There were several others that were in there, and you guys had money and you had better offers in there as well, which kind of goes back to maybe the 20%, maybe it's 30 or 40% here in this audience. But look at all the other ones that also undervalued, unhappy, unappreciated opportunities. This all gets back to how people are actually being led at the office. They're leaving because they want the hope that they can go somewhere and they're not going to be micromanaged. They're leaving because they're the hope that they might be valued where they go. They're leaving for the hope that they might be trusted by their leaders. So we're going to do another exercise. And I'd like you to think of the leader that you most want to emulate. Who is that leader above all other leaders that you would want to follow to the ends of the earth? Do you guys have that person in your mind? Now I want you to think of 3 traits that embody that leader. And here's a list, if that helps. And then in a minute, I'm going to ask you to go back into Slido and give me each one of those traits on a different line. Okay? So what are those 3 traits? What are the 3 traits that really embody who's that leader that you most want to emulate? They have honest, they have empathy, they have energy. They're humble, they're smart, they're inspiring. Ooh, they're transparent, that's a good one. I did this a few weeks ago and somebody wrote on there, they don't schedule meetings at 4:30 on a Friday. And I'm like, dang, that's the winner right there. They're inspiring and honest and empathetic. They lead by example. They're strict, wow. They're sexy, okay. I'll go with that. They're human. All right, so it looks like right now, trustworthy, empathetic, inspiring, honest, humble, motivating, trusting. That's what we're really looking for in our leaders today. And again, I've taken all of this information and I've aggregated it together. And it looks something like this. When I look at this, it tells me 3 different things. Number 1, I've been doing this now for about 4 years in gathering all of these traits. And if I take just the answers from January until today, the trait of empathy and being empathetic has outpaced every other single trait that's been out there. That's why it's so dominant on this list here. And this is about 4 years worth of work that I've put together. People are looking for empathy. We've gone through a lot of hard times over the last couple of years, and people are just looking for that empathetic boss that's going to listen to them. The second thing that it tells me is that when I first started this, I thought, you know what? I have a lot of military friends. I'm going to get answers like, they were powerful, and they were bold, and they were fearless. But where are they on that list? They're there, but they're pretty small. And when I go into bookshops, that's what I see all lined up: how to be a fearless leader, how to be a bold leader. But that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for you to be empathetic and to be a good listener and to be inspiring and to be honest. That's what people are looking for, those softer traits. The third thing that it tells me, I have a best friend, his name is Doug. And he is the most charismatic guy that is out there. He is that guy that is always walking around and shaking your hand and how are you doing and knows everybody's name. And I thought, dang, he is a good leader. I want to be like Doug. And I tried it for like 2 days. I needed to take a nap. I just realized that's not really necessarily who I am. I can't be charismatic 100% of the time. Anybody else? Can they be? There's some people who out there that are charismatic all the time. I just realized that's not one of my traits. I'm empathetic. I love to listen to people. I'm passionate about what I do. And so if you're thinking that, you know what, in order to be a great leader, I have to be charismatic. Well, guess what? You probably resonate with some of the other traits that you see up here. Maybe you are honest. Maybe you do have integrity. And what's important to understand is that people are looking for you. They're looking for your traits. And really, it all starts with you. Like I said, it's a handy guide. The first thing, we need to be self-aware. So just with a small clap, has anybody in here taken any of the personality tests? Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths, DISC assessments, 360s. Just go ahead and just give a little clap. Okay. I will tell you, I was the biggest skeptic of these things. I thought, there is no way that me filling out all of these little bubbles is going to tell me anything about who I am. I am an individual. And I was so wrong. You know what? I knew what my strengths were, and I had a pretty good idea of what my weaknesses were. I didn't really want to acknowledge them. But what it showed me were my blind spots. And that was what was so important. Because I know that as an engineer, man, I get so super focused on what I'm doing that my husband can be downstairs telling me that it's time for dinner and I might not even hear him. Anybody else kind of like that when they're coding? But what does that say about me as a leader? If I'm so super focused on what I'm doing, then I'm blocking out everybody and everything around me. It's something that brought to my consciousness. This is something that I need to be aware of. So be self-aware. Number 2, be proficient. As leaders, it's okay to not have all the answers, but we need to have a little vulnerability and realize where do we need to apply those strengths. I would challenge you, every week, read one article. Maybe if it's professional development, or maybe it's personal development. Just by being here, this is part of your personal and professional development. So you guys can check that one off for this week. But be proficient, know what you don't know, and use that to gain that edge. And lastly, be yourself. I told you before, I tried to be a leader like Doug and just wound up having to take a nap for 2 days. But I'll tell you another story. I was a young junior officer, and I was put in charge of 14 people, and I had never led before in my life. And I was like, all right, I got this. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I looked at my bosses and the way that they led, and they were all yellers. I'm like, wow, okay. So I thought, okay, well, I guess that's what you do, is you yell at people to make them do what you want them to do. Anybody else had a boss like that? You don't have to self-identify if they're sitting next to you. And so that's what I did. I got yelled at by my boss for some work that I had done, and so I turned around to my group of 14 people, and I yelled at them. And I degraded them and everything that had been done to me. And you know what? Have you ever felt that in your chest? That you know that it's the wrong thing? That it's the wrong thing to do? I went home that night, and I really had to think about what it meant to be an officer in the United States Navy. Was I really cut out to be that type of leader? And it took some time, and I realized that, you know what, I can never say I'm sorry to those people, and I wish I could. And it took a mentor almost 6 months to work with me to try to figure out, okay, you're definitely not a yeller. That's not who you are. What kind of leader are you truly? So you have to be yourself. Because when you're not, you know what, your team is going to see right through you. Any trust that you had ever developed with them, it's just going to go by the wayside. So be yourself. Now, I know it starts to sound really selfish that it always starts with you, but you have to be right with yourself before you can lead your people. Which gets into knowing your team. So I have a couple quizzes for you. Number 1, this is the easy one. Do you know all of your team members' names? This is maybe subordinates, maybe this is your peers. Maybe you work in a matrix organization. All right, we have lots of yeses. Okay, that's the easy one. Next. Do you know your significant other's names for your members? Lots of no's. All right. Looks about 1/3, 2/3. The yeses are trying to keep up. You can't just keep hitting yes. That's cheating. Okay. Do you know if they have kids or pets? Seems like we know a lot more about their kids and pets than their significant others' names. Okay, now the no's are trying to keep up. All right. This one's controversial. Do you know their favorite sport? So I'm putting football and soccer, because that's what we call it over in America. You also have football. Hockey, baseball. Ooh, what are the other sports? Like field hockey? Tennis? What is it? A Formula One. Ooh. Handball. All right, so we know a lot about what they think about sports. All right, this is the most important one. Do you know their goals and aspirations? Got a lot of yeses and some nos. This is actually a pretty good ratio. A lot of times when I do this, there's a lot more no's than there are yeses. But that's our job as leaders, is to know our people so that we can develop our people so we can make them better than they are today. And you might say, you know, these are a lot of questions. I don't know if I can do that for my whole team. And so I'd like to introduce you to Rudy. Now, Rudy was the CEO of a company that I recently worked at. We started at about 500 people when I first joined. And Rudy was in Atlanta, which is on the East Coast of the United States, and I was on the West Coast near San Francisco. I had just joined the company. I'm sitting in my office, and Rudy comes in. And he's like, "Hey, Jen, how are you doing?" Well, first I'm shocked that the president of the company even knows my name. And it's like, great, Rudy, I'm glad to be here. And we sit down and we have this fantastic conversation. And he says, "Jen, it's been really great talking to you, but I got to go talk to somebody down the hall." I'm like, wow, I kind of feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. I mean, the president of the company just came and talked to me. Well, about 6 months go by, and Rudy has to fly from Atlanta back out to San Francisco. And he comes in my office and says, "Hey, Jen, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Great, Rudy. Hey, how was that vacation that you and your husband, Sean, went on?" Okay, well, first off, I can't remember what vacation I went on, but I'm like, oh my gosh, he remembers I was going on vacation, and he remembers my husband's name? And then I said, "You know, great, it was great, Rudy." And then he says, "Hey, how's that project that you're working on with all the liquefaction from Alaska from a big magnitude 9 earthquake?" And I work on about 8 projects, you know, all at once, but he remembers this one. I was like, "Rudy, it is going so awesome. We are making so many new findings. This is going to be absolutely great when we get this all put together." And he says, "That's really important. I want you to write a journal paper about this. I'm going to go talk to your boss, Chris, down the hall to make sure that you get this written up and we get it into a peer-reviewed journal." Now, as engineers, especially civil engineers, it is so important for our personal development to have peer-reviewed journal papers. And here is the president of the company who cares enough about me that he's going to go make sure that my boss, Chris, makes sure this thing gets written. He's like, "Jen, it's been great talking to you. I got to go talk to somebody else down the hall." I'm like, so I go into the break room, and I am just like, my mind's just like, how does Rudy know all this? And I talked to my colleague, and I said, "You will not believe this. Rudy knows my name. He knows my husband's name. He knows what projects I'm working on, and he cares about my professional development. Is he a stalker?" And my friend says, no. He's not a stalker, but he has this trick. What he does is he takes note cards, and he has your name at the top. And then at the end of each day, he goes in and fills in what he talked about. And he keeps a little stack, and it's the Oakland stack. And so whenever he flies out from Atlanta to San Francisco, he grabs that stack, takes off the rubber band, and starts to read through all of the different cards. I asked Rudy about this a couple months ago, and I said, "Rudy, this is a fantastic trick that you have." And he said, "It was never a trick. I was afraid that my mind would start to lose the important conversations that I had had with my people." And he followed up with this, and I'll give you a minute to read that. Family, commitment. Isn't that the kind of boss that we would want to work for? Isn't that the kind of boss that we would hope to be someday for our people? When I decided to leave Geosyntec, we started out at 500 people. I left when we were at 1,200 people. They made me call Rudy to tell him that I was starting my own company. I'm not really a crier, but I'm just telling you, man, I was like bawling on the phone trying to tell Rudy that I decided to leave to open my own company. I felt like I had let Rudy down by leaving. That's how much attachment that I had to the company. And it all starts with the leadership at the top and the way that he treated everybody in that company. Now, Rudy was old school. He had his little note cards. But think of everything that we have at our disposal. We have our phones and we have tablets. We can use sticky notes. How are all the different ways that you can get to know your team and everything about your team so that you can start to bring in that loyalty? Because just by asking questions, that's what's going to start to open the door for trust. And I know everybody says that trust is a two-way street. Everybody's heard that. But I will tell you, as leaders, we need to be to the on-ramp first. We need to be able to show that we trust our personnel so that they trust us in return. And there's multiple ways that we can do this, but starting with just asking questions is the best way to do that. Just ask questions. So I'd like to ask you, have you ever been in a business relationship where you have not been trusted? And if so, what did it feel like? And I'm really hoping that nobody is able to answer this question. Disappointed. They felt like they were in kindergarten. Crushed or crusted. Ooh. Somebody actually put up a poop symbol once, and I'm like, I understand that one. Right. They were alone. They felt childish. They were invisible. They failed. They were ashamed. They were neglected. They were not valued. Who wants to go to work like that? You know, so as I look at that, it's the same thing. This gets down to, how are we being led? How are we leading our people? We have to look inside ourselves and look at, are we trusting others? And do they feel like that whenever they go to work? Harvard Business Review recently held a poll that said that 1/3 of people would rather trust a complete stranger than their boss. So if your boss is on either side of you, okay, but let's turn that around. Let's be a little bit more positive. Have you been in a situation where you have been trusted? How did that feel? Hopefully lots of people will be able to turn on this one. Empowered, that they have wings. Oh, they don't know. That makes me sad. But inspiring, they felt great and good and powerful, that they could go do their job and they didn't have to be micromanaged for every single thing that they did, right? That's how we want our people to feel. This is how we want people to go to work. This is the way that we want to keep our people. Remember at the very beginning, we started to talk about why did people leave, and you told me that they felt undervalued, that they didn't feel trusted. This is what it looks like. This is how we keep our people. Rainbows. So it looks kind of like this. All right, this one is just by a show of hands. So unfortunately, the folks online, I can't help you too much on this one. But we talked about the 80% of people who are leaving because they want the hope of feeling valued and trusted, and then the other 20% who are probably leaving for greater opportunities. But let's talk about the growth rate of companies. What is the growth rate of companies that have open and effective management? So if you think that it's A, just go ahead and give me a clap. How about B? How about C? How about D? Who didn't vote? All right. And there's no like C and a half. I know, we can't do that. Okay, the answer is D. With open and effective management, even in today's market, they are growing exponentially because they care about their people and they're open in the way that they perform their duties. So this is what I'd like for you to think about today. We've heard several great talks already, and I want to know, what is one thing that you can start tomorrow morning? And it doesn't have to be from my talk. It can be from any of the talks that you've heard today. Hello, world. Ask questions, write cards, one-on-ones, trust your team, have breakfasts. I know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I get that. Learn the spouse's names. Continue stalking. Yes! That's illegal in the United States, but hey, go for it wherever you're from. Calories. Face that. Cavington. Breathe, coffee. All right, we got like a coffee and like a breakfast thing going. Booze with your team, yes. These are just small, simple little things that you can begin starting tomorrow. Have breakfast, have coffee with that. But understand that this is what can happen if we take what we've learned today and tomorrow as well and try to make things a little better. Okay, and with that, here's my recommendations. Look at your weaknesses, look at your strengths, and look at those blind spots and how that can be affecting your team. Start to ask questions. Several of you had that as well. And then also start to establish trust. And like the little guy, have some coffee. All right, we have some time for some questions.
We do indeed, thank you, and we do have questions, lots of them actually. A lot of people tend to say you should avoid companies who refer to themselves as family, yet you use it as a positive example. What do you think? What's the truth here?
That's a good question. And the reason why is that sometimes whenever people say that, oh, we're a big family, a lot of times you can take advantage of people when you say that we are a big family. But if somebody really means that from the heart, that they think of it as family, and the way that you would want to be treated within your family, I think that's a very acceptable thing to do. There's also a lot of people who believe that it's like, you know what, my personal life is my personal life. You don't need to know my spouse. You don't need to know that I have pets or what my favorite football team is. And that's okay, because that's where they feel comfortable. But there's also people that would like to open up and get to know you a little bit better and really feel more part of the organization. So you just really have to take a look at, you know, what that family really is.
All right, we have a little concurrency thing going on here. So how do I send my CV to Rudy?
Unfortunately, he has stepped down. So I think he's now working at Virginia Tech. He's doing some leadership classes there, which seem absolutely appropriate. So you can always go to Virginia Tech, and I'm sure that he would love to hear from you.
Okay, so I guess you have to walk in to see him. Okay, do you have any special tips for one-on-ones? How can I, as a leader, make the most out of them?
Yes. Is anybody here an introvert? Okay, that's great. And the extroverts, okay, you guys got this. Like, you know what you're already doing. Because you go and you talk to everybody, just like my friend Doug. Okay, introverts, this is like where we excel, because we love one-on-one communications. Think about going to, if you're back in the office, just go and just sit down with them. And maybe have a one-on-one with them and just say, hey, what are you working on? Maybe there's some type of process that they're doing that you don't fully understand. But just by opening up and saying, hey, can you explain this a little bit more? That shows that you're vulnerable, but you're interested, and then you can receive that information from them. And a lot of times people want to show off that, hey, I know something the boss doesn't, and they'll talk to you. You can also think about doing a lunch and learn. Maybe bring people into the conference room. Take them out for coffee. Take them out for booze, if you really want to get to know them. But there's all types of ways that we can do one-on-ones. And some people feel more comfortable with just in their own little area, maybe their cubicle. If you're over Zoom or WebEx or whatever it might be, you know, think about that as well. How am I going to connect with this person? And different people connect in different ways. And so as leaders, we have to have the emotional intelligence to understand how to connect with that person. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. I would just say you might have to try different methods with different people.
Okay, the next one is a bit tricky and specific. In the word cloud in the morning, we had no gas in Hungarian from somebody. And this one is, again, like inflation rates in Hungary for October and November were around 20% monthly. Money overrides other quitting reasons. What would you do as a company leader?
This is a really tough one. I mean, especially with inflation rates and people being laid off left and right. As a leader, I would have the hard conversation with the personnel first and say, this is where we are, this is what's going on. You might have to relook at your finances, see if there's some way that you can get over the hump until the inflation starts to go down. But this is really going to probably be on a company-to-company basis. If the company can't keep up with inflation, and they might go under, maybe they're a small mom-and-pop type of organization, you're going to have the hard conversation. And if you are going to have to let people go for more money, then you know what? Stand behind them. Stand behind them if they have to go to another area and say, you know what, this person is absolutely great at what they do, and support them if they do have to go. Try to retain them the best that you can by trying to scrounge or whatever you need to do to retain them. But if they do have to leave, man, freaking support them.
Thank you. Can you please define blind spots examples?
Yes. So one of my blind spots is because I focus so much on what I'm doing that I block everything else out. I really do. Here's another really good example. Again, I was in the military, and as part of that, we had to do a 360 assessment. And what that meant is that my bosses, and then also my peers, and then also my subordinates had to answer questions. Questions from my peers and also from my subordinates were all anonymous. My bosses said I was great, which was nice, but I received one piece of anonymous information from one of my subordinates, and they said, she doesn't trust us. They're like, whoa. When she gets stressed out, she doesn't delegate, she does it all herself, and she doesn't trust us. And I thought, whew, wow, all right, gonna have to get over that one. But it was true. What I was doing is that I would get really stressed out about a deadline, and I would think, you know what? My people can't handle it. They can't do it the way that I want them to do it, in the time that I want them to have it done, and it's not going to be to the right standards. And so I would keep it myself, and I wouldn't delegate down. And by having this 360 assessment, I realized, you know what? They can do it. I had just never spent the time to properly train them to actually do the tasks that really needed to be done. And so that's something that is also now in my conscience, that whenever I get really stressed out, am I keeping everything to myself? Or am I properly delegating down to the people who really can do it? They can do it really well. But that's one of my blind spots, is that I get so stressed out that I'm afraid to delegate. So hopefully that answers your question.
Work-life balance or work-life integration, what do you think? Do we really need to separate our work life from the private one?
I think this depends on where you work. There are some places that really do feel like family. And that's really a nice type of balance between the two. However, if your family is trying to take advantage of you and making you work 90 hours a week and saying, we're family, you know, that's probably not the way to do it, because you might actually have a family out on the outside as well. Talk to your spouse, talk to your significant other, and realize, hey, am I sacrificing too much from the work side and not taking enough time on the family side? I will tell you that I am really horrible at work-life balance. I typically work about 70, 80 hours a week. And I'm sure many of you do that too. And I've realized I am now a recovering workaholic, and I'm trying to be better about spending more time with my family. So this was not a work-life balance type of stuff.
Many leadership books suggest not to compare colleagues to family because you don't hire or fire family members. What's your opinion about Rudy's comparison?
I'll tell you that I loved working for Rudy. Everybody that was at the company loved working for Rudy. That's why we grew from 500 people to almost 1,200 people in the span of 5 years, because he treated people well. Maybe we don't use the term family. Maybe we just treat people in a really nice way. Family sounds better. Maybe it's less syllables. But think about it that way. How are we actually treating our people? And so, yes, Rudy wanted to treat his people like his family, because I knew Rudy, and I knew his wife, and I knew his kids. And I knew what a loving father he was and how much he supported his kids and his wife. And he wanted that for all of the people within the company. And so I think for Rudy, that's what he knew, and that's how he was able to say, this is how I want to treat my people as a family.
Thank you. Any tricks to overcome cultural barriers when it comes to learning more about colleagues?
I would say ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can, especially if you do have cultural barriers. Learn what they are. What is important to different people? Maybe there's something that people really value in their culture that maybe you don't fully understand. Use this as an opportunity to try to learn about that so that you can start to overcome those barriers. Maybe one of the cultural barriers is that they don't like to answer questions. Just ask them. Are my questions too intrusive? There's different ways around this. But I think the way to overcome cultural barriers is to really understand what the barriers are, where people feel most comfortable, and where they can really start to thrive, because they feel that they're trusted again, and they feel that they're in good hands.
Thank you, and I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
Our company recently got managers from the USA. Communication became more sugar-coated and less transparent. Any thoughts on American versus European leadership style?
I love that you guys are so direct. I do, I really do. Yes, okay, we're Americans, you know, we like to make everybody happy. But no, I actually, being from a military background, I like being more direct. I really do. And if you're finding that some of your US managers are sugarcoating things, you might just say you don't have to sugarcoat. You can be pretty honest with folks, especially from the US. A lot of times that's one of our cultural differences, is that we try to make things a little bit better than what they normally sound. But just be honest, and you can be direct with people. That's what's so endearing about you.
I'll step back a bit and then let you finish.
Thank you. Oh, wait. I want to end back with this slide. I want each one of you to look at this slide and find your strengths. Find the strengths that really start to sing to your heart. Because leaders, this is our time. We can rebuild ourselves. We can refine ourselves to make ourselves just that much better than we are today. We can do something a little scary and a little daring, maybe a little outside of our box, to elevate ourselves just that much more than where we are today. And leaders, this is our time. This is our time to be agents of change. We can do it. We have the power to make things not only better for ourselves, but better for our people. And if we're able to do that, we might actually be able to make a better world that we all live in. Leaders, this is our time to rise. Are you with me? Thank you. All right. Thank you all.